Hey friends, it's Jeannie, and today I'm sharing a Christmas card. Yes, it's July, but I did mention that I wanted to create a holiday series on my channel. I've never been able to use all my holiday sets within November and December, so I decided that this year I'd start early and take you along the journey. For today's card, I pulled out a ton of Gerda Steiner stamp sets to use them for a one-layer scene card. I wanted to create a one-layer scene because I'll be using Pear Blossom Press's Easy Lights to add in a light element to this card. I stamped and cut out mask for all the images so I could build a template scene. So this template scene helps show me which images I need to stamp out first to last. The images that I want in the front will be stamped out first, and the ones that end up being in the back will be stamped out last. I'll use my template to know where to place my stamps in the MISTI, and I'll use the MISTI to pick up the stamps, remove the template, and then stamp it on my scene. So once I stamp the images, I'll move the mask from my template and I'll place it on my main scene, so then I can continue to repeat until my scene is complete. For this scene, I did it quite a few times because it is a bit complicated. I had a lot of different elements going on. I wanted a crowded scene, and I even wanted to add Santa in there, but I decided against it because it was getting a little too crowded for something that will have a light up element as well. I really do enjoy creating these scenes. I love masking. I love adding distress inks for the background as well. So this is one of the ones that take a little bit more time, but I think is well worth it. And once you get the hang of stamping and masking, it's actually quite easy to do, especially if you use a template. And yes, of course, it takes a little bit extra time to cut out masks for everything, especially if it's a simple image to cut, then it's a lot easier. I don't try to do it with more complicated images that are harder to cut because it does take a lot of time to do so. But these images were fairly easy to do, so I didn't have a problem doing so. My plan for this was to light up the star, one of the ornaments, and Rudolph's nose because I thought that'd be really cute. I definitely wanted to do a nighttime scene so the lights would really show up or make sense to be lit up. So for the background, I am using my favorite things, Snowy Drifts, and this is just one of those dies that I have in my collection. I think it's retired, but it is just one of those that help create scenes. I think that in every crafter's arsenal, you should have some of these dies. This die in particular helped me create the snowdrift, which I used shaded lilac to blend in some color. It kind of turns into white, but it does have that dimension because it's against this dark blue sky that I'm going to be creating. For the sky, I'm using Blueprint Sketch, Chipped Sapphire, Dusty Concord, and Black Soot. I keep going back in and adding more and more color until it gets to the color that I like. So I wanted to add white splatter, which would look like snow. I used Brutus Monroe's white aqua pigment, and it was kind of light. It's kind of watered down, it seems. So I added a little bit of white gouache to it, and that really added the brightness of the white. And I had splattered it using an acrylic block, and it kind of made it look like a snowstorm because you can see the snow kind of swirling in the background. And that's okay. I didn't intend it to look like that, but it just ended up like that, and it looks pretty cool actually. And I do end up going in to cover it up with the sentiment, but I think that the effect is still very Christmassy. I'm using Copic markers to color up the scene, and of course I'll have all the colors I use listed down below in my supply list. There is a lot happening in this scene with a lot of images, but coloring assembly style helps speed up the process. So I'll color all the parts with the same colors at once, and I find that makes coloring a lot faster. For example, I go in and color all the antlers at once and all the reindeer bodies at once. Because I'm using the same colors, there's not very many variations. so I can just go in, color everything, and then move on to the next Copic color and blend everything out. So it works really well. I realized that I have two Copic caps on the screen sometimes, and that is just because I'll remove the second Copic cap to prevent any blobbing. So sometimes when Copic markers are overfilled or I overfill them with too much ink, they will build up and blob onto your project, which is never fun because you have to go in and fix it, or it kind of ruins your entire project. So some of these markers I felt like were extra inky, so I'll remove the second cap just to relieve that pressure from the Copic marker, and I'll avoid having a blobby mess. I've had so many projects where I color and didn't realize that just removing the second cap really helps you prevent any blobbing from happening. And I'm sure that a ton of people have experienced this because I see it all the time where people ask about like, oh, this marker just like blobbed onto my project and I don't know why. But removing the second cap on your Copic marker is totally helpful in preventing that. So if you didn't know, now you know, and I hope that you will no longer have any blobby projects when you are coloring. For this scene, I'm using very simple colors. I didn't want to use so many Copic markers. I know that a lot of the time when you color with Copic markers and you want that dimension, you end up using so many Copic markers. So when that happens, I try to prevent that from happening by just keeping with the same color scheme. So I'm only using red, orange, and blues for the ornaments. I could have used many different other colors, but I decided not to. So once I finish coloring, I'm going in with an X-Acto knife to cut out the little areas for my windows for the light. So the star, the little ornament, and Rudolph's nose. And I think that if you don't have a die, an X-Acto knife works perfectly. So for these windows, where I wanted the lights to shine through, I cut out a few pieces of vellum so I can color them with Copic markers. I used yellow, red, and orange, and the light will shine through the vellum and will project these colors. Before I had attempted to use these easy lights, I went over and watched Amanda's YouTube videos. Amanda is the owner and creator of Easy Light, and I'll leave her YouTube channel down below as well because she has a ton of tutorials using these lights. This pack of Easy Light has 5 batteries and 5 units, which have 3 lights connected to them through a wire. And I only need one of the units for this card, so I'm just carefully detaching it. And I wanted to mat this card panel on red, but I didn't want the red cardstock to affect the colors the light projected. So I used a rectangle die to cut out the interior of that red cardstock. So when I mount it on this card base, the white will show through and will be right behind the little windows. I had tried lights from another company and they were a little too complicated for me. It required creating a pathway of copper tape, and I just really didn't like it because I put so much time into creating a card panel and then I had to spend extra time engineering the light. I'm just lazy, and these I find to be so much easier. So here I'm just using my pencil to mark off exactly where the lights will go through the little windows. I had watched her videos previously with these lights and it just made it look super duper easy, but yet I was still intimidated by them because, I mean, come on, they're lights in a card. But after creating this particular card, it just was so easy. So how I'm doing it is I have all the pencil marks for exactly where the windows are, and I'm putting the lights face up and taping them down with Scotch tape. It's very easy to do. There's a flat back, so you'll be able to do it once you finagle the little wires to how you want it to be. So I just tape them down with Scotch tape, and I'm kind of letting the wires lie where they lie. I don't have to worry too much about it because the foam tape will actually go right on top of it, and as long as you're not bending the wires, the foam tape doesn't affect it, and they're pretty sturdy. So I thought that that it was pretty cool, because sometimes I worry about if you put foam tape or too much pressure on the wires, it wouldn't work. But as long as you're not bending the wires, they should work perfectly. So I'm just testing out the unit and making sure that the lights are exactly where I needed them to be. I'm going to go ahead and adhere the vellum with the Copic coloring on top of the card panel. So the red will be for the nose, orange for the ornament, and yellow for the star. I keep testing and playing with it because I felt like something was going to go wrong. This was a little too easy, but I got to the unit part where I'm just adding double-sided adhesive to it. I'm keeping in mind that I want foam tape all around the card panel because the unit is about the thickness of 2 layers of foam. So I wanted to leave a foam border so you didn't have this battery pack exposed. I move it towards the inside just so I have enough space to add the foam tape on the card panel. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the sentiment to the card ahead of adding it to the card base. Once I have all that figured out, I'm going to cover this card panel in foam, and like I said before, the foam tape can go directly on the wires and it won't affect it. It'll still work, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm just adding in foam tape to fill in any of the empty space, just so when a person receives this card, if they press down in the wrong areas, it won't affect the card. So you need that bulk and dimension because it's 2 layers of foam. So you don't want empty space of the card where, they can press down on it and it would kind of collapse. Once I have all the foam tape adhered to the card panel, I am going to be super careful placing this onto the card base. I just wasn't sure if this was going to work out. This was my first time using these lights, and once you put tape onto a card base, you're kind of stuck with it. So I was very, very careful, and I made sure that the lights would work perfectly right underneath the windows before I taped it on. But once I did, everything worked out well. I left the little push here that I stamped out for my recipient as the last touch because I just wasn't sure if I put the card panel down and it might not have matched up, but leaving it to the very end works out because you know exactly where the little button is. So this card was much easier to put together than I had expected. It's a fun element to add to any card, especially a Christmas card. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you'll try out these lights yourself. Have a great day. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.